For a woman to consider Om as a way of life, namely the recluse way of life that is the consequence of the use of the mantra Om, and all the other consequences that go with that, and analogous and parallel to homelessness, is the giving up of all desires, possessions, so that the individual is left bereft of possessing anything, because the idea is to ultimately give up the personality in favor of the ego. The ego, as Charlie Lutz uses the term, is the cosmic personality, while the personality is something very temporal because it keeps changing as we grow, as we exist under various circumstances which keeps changing, such as the growth and development of the body, the aging of the body. All of this affects the personality and changes it. And maybe we don't see the change, but everybody else does. When we're put under dire circumstances and have to reinvent ourselves from time to time, if that should be the case. You know, some people, the personality never changes because their life is the same from birth to grave. But it's a fabrication, a temporary crutch, shall we say, to get through life. And the only reason why we have the necessity for such a crutch is due to ignorance and passion. Whatever degree of both are under commission, shall we say, due to our mortality. We have passion, we have ignorance, and that contributes to the personality along with circumstances and blah, 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 desires, everything else. But the ego is different. I have to tell you, it's something beyond imagination, and you can't analyze it, because if you do, you'll lose it. If you want to lose it, go ahead and analyze it if you should experience it, because it is so indefinable. I mean, we say it's cosmic, and maybe that's the only way to deal with it, is to call it cosmic in its scope, because any definition would be too narrow a consideration and an understatement of what we are possessing when we possess our ego. Now, the ego is always there, but the personality is a mask that we wear that covers the ego, and so we don't even notice that we have an ego. We don't notice that we have a cosmic status. We think we're prodigal children, lost to God because God walked out on us, when in fact we're the bitches who put an obstruction in our way so that we would not see the Father. And we would just assume that we're being punished, when in fact we're the ones who created the situation in the first place. It was necessary, though. You know, all the so-called fall from grace in the Garden of Eden in the Bible, there's no other way to reach or to earn a God-like status except to become something else, a non-God, the opposite of God, and identify with our animal existence, semi-civilized as it is, and think that there's nothing else beyond the grave, blah, blah, blah. Well, if we identify with the personality, yeah, there would be nothing beyond the grave, would there? But there is a part of us, and we like to think it's God, because it can't possibly be us, but it is us. And that was my disappointment when I was 19, when I was experiencing trysting with Mother Divine. It erupted or evolved into union. The lover and the loved one became one. And when that happened, it was so disappointing, because there was no longer any features to the dialogue between God and self. It was simply became the self. There no longer was any consideration of God anywhere. Which means it took us to divide ourselves from God to come to appreciate that there is one worth seeking, for that matter. Because in our union with God, you can't analyze yourself when the self is in union with the all-encompassing and everything in between. So it's out here in the relative, walking around in a human body to which we identify ourselves completely, or to one degree or another, let's say, that we can analyze, look at a tree, and say, well, I'm not the tree. And so thus we can have a little perspective on the matter. So it creates perspective when we create distance and separation. And the personality allows us to do that. Without one, we couldn't do that. And we couldn't appreciate, oh, there's a God? Oh, and it's worth seeking? Oh, because we wouldn't know. There'd be no knowledge, no awareness. Because ultimately it's ourself that we seek. Little do we know that is what is made in the image of God, is ourself. We are, as mortal humans walking around, are not gods per se, because of this lower echelon existence that we succumb to. And we have no choice. We're kind of born into it and live our lives in it and die. So it's pretty convincing. Oh, wow, I'm dying, It's very convincing. And yet, as a meditator, there's something else that's also convincing, but it's very difficult to put into words. When I went for my first day, when I was 16, that would have been 50 years ago. No. Yeah. Oh, that's right. This is my 50-year anniversary of starting TM. When I went to go be initiated into transcendental meditation, and I came back, and my stepfather asked me, so how was it? Well, yeah, you have a reason to ask, because he didn't pay for it. My parents refused to pay for it. I had to grovel him, to get the $35 together to pay for it in 1974, January 5th. Or was it 4th? It was a Saturday, whatever day that is, was. Angel Jaimez, that's his birthday. Can you imagine that? On my 20th anniversary. The alcoholic I nursemaided, his birthday is my 20th anniversary of getting initiated into transcendental meditation. Anywho, January 5th, because he was born 1994, and I was initiated 1974. So that's where the 4 is. All right, got that cleared away. So I told my stepfather, it's something special, or it's something very special, something to that effect, because I couldn't put it into words. How do you put into words something to which there is no parallel in common sense experience, in common experience? There just isn't. Poets speak wildly of how much they want to have that beautiful experience again. Damn it, and they never do. They have it once, and that's it. Oh, but they speak highly of it, Whereas a TM meditator can have it many, many times. During a meditation, or twice a day in meditation. And then after a while start to have it in activity. Such that over time it becomes familiar. And take it for granted. and it kind of molds the mind in the process. It's not brainwashing or anything, we're not following a cult. But it does have its impact on the mind, and so you start to understand what it's about and start to put it into words, the consequences, but the experience itself. But that's when you're out of the experience after, years of meditating. But in the experience, you can't describe nothing. There's nothing you can describe. It's impossible. So this is what the cosmic ego is. This is what the true ego is. It's indescribable. Because of its scope, because of its candor, because of its existential non-limitation boundaries. I mean, when something has boundaries, you can describe it because its boundaries give it away. But when something does not have any boundaries, how do you describe it? It doesn't mean it's not there. It doesn't mean that it's not superlative. It's just you can't describe it. It's impossible. You literally become speechless in self-awareness of the self. So, that aside for the moment, what is Om? Because that was the reason for this recording. Om is the mantra of choice for recluses. It is not the mantra of choice for householders. Maharishi gives specific mantras to householders to increase their desire, not diminish it. But that's what Om does. It diminishes desire across the board. So that in some extreme cases, those yogis who practice Om meditation give up their clothing, give up food, and beg for food with one hand stretched out because they've already given up their coconut shell to beg for food, and they've given up their loincloth, and they've definitely given up their home. They are homeless. They live in the forest, in a cave, whatever, and they've given up contact with society because they don't want to have anything to do with anything. And they become nature buffs in a sense, because now nature takes care of them. But now what Maharishi says, Maharishi Mahesh Yogi, who crafted the TM technique and promoted it single-handedly in the beginning, what he says about Om is that it's the path of the recluse, but it's fire for the woman. Now this is why, it's because Om is so popular in India, and thus reclusiveness among the yogis who practice meditation for the point and purpose of gaining enlightenment. This is why traditionally in India women do not become yogis. There's really no wiggle room for yoginis, yet they have the term yogini, because on rare occasion it does happen, but it's very rare because I used to think it was a social invention, a cultural suppression of the woman's instinct to be herself. If she wants to pursue yoga, why not? Let her. No, I was wrong. I was mistaken. It's due to the fact that the woman's inclination is to have a home, to marry and have a guy who will provide her with a home, because it would be fire for her to even consider being without a home. This goes along parallel with the Om mantra, the use of the Om mantra. So if the Om mantra is fire for the woman, and thus not appropriate, it's not appropriate for her to be a recluse any more than it would be appropriate to have no home, because it would be fire to do so. Now, what does that mean when Maharishi says it? I imagine what it means is that it's something akin to spontaneous combustion. Hopefully, not physically, but emotionally is. She literally comes on fire. Now, why do I say this? Because several days ago, I was walking along the street, and in the section of Lowe's parking lot where all the cars are parked among the homeless, and this woman was bitching at her boyfriend, husband, whoever he was. Oh, was she bitching. This is right by the street. I'm walking right by it, And then it dawns on me what I've just described to you. that homelessness, like the use of the word of the mantra Om, is fire for the woman and is not to be pursued for that reason, because it would be antithetical, it would be counterproductive for a woman to be homeless, or for that matter to make use of the mantra Om. Now, in a prior Manvantara, prior to this one, the mantra of choice for recluses was not Om, because Om is basically the ping, shall we say, of the Manvantara era to which it belongs or is associated with. Each Manvantara apparently has its own mantra associated with it. As time proceeds and one Manvantara period of duration is replaced by another, and they're extremely long. I can't remember the number of years. It's very long. To God, it's a twinkling in the eye, right? But to us, it's very long. So each Manvantara has a mantra associated with it, but they all share the same characteristic of producing reclusiveness and the giving up of desires and possessions among the yogi who practice that use of that mantra. And so in all cases, it would be the same effect for the woman in that particular Manvantara, to make use of the mantra associated with that Manvantara. It would be fire for her nervous system. And if you know anything about fire, it can be pleasant when the Kundalini rages, or it can be not so pleasant. And in the case of the woman, it's not so pleasant when they use that mantra. So Maharishi comes along, and I thought he was being egalitarian and a genius to incorporate the other half of the population in pursuit of transcendental meditation and bring in more meditators by including women, when in reality, no, that's not what he... It was simply a consequence of the fact that he was moving among householders and had to give them mantras that were appropriate for their way of life. And that had the consequence of automatically including women, because they would not have to fear becoming recluses, giving up everything, and becoming lit on fire constantly 24/7. Kundalini doesn't have to be an uncomfortable experience. But apparently for a woman, using Om, it is. Or losing her home, it is. And this is a very significant understanding, because it explains to me why I've had two women come down so hard on me for being homeless. Oh, you need to seek a shelter, blah, blah, blah. And I'm so fastidious because, and I keep thinking, oh, I'm a Boy Scout, Well, when I was with my ex, I've been homeless many times, and when I was with my ex, I was homeless for a time in a season. And after 6 months, I believe it was, she started freaking out. She started throwing grapefruits at me, and that reminded me of the scene in a Jimmy Cagney movie, a gangster character from the black and white studio era, in which he takes the cut side of one half of a grapefruit and shoves the cut side into his girlfriend's face. And I was like, oh shit! Now this is the end. This is the end of being homeless. We have to get out of this. So she melted my heart. So I did what was necessary, what I was avoiding, to get out of that homeless state, because she obviously couldn't handle it. She was nonstop bitching. She just got lit on fire. And she couldn't put herself out any more than I could. I didn't know what was going on. Well, now I understand. It was the homeless state, and that did put it out. It appeased her, and her fire went out, and she was a beautiful woman again, But anyway, so this is a very interesting situation, because it parallels. I'm uniting two concepts: the concept of recluse way of yoga, the recluse path of yoga, which makes use of the mantra as appropriate for this Manvantara, which is Om, or Aum, if you prefer, and homelessness. Both are part and parcel to a condition that the woman gender among us must not be subjected to, because it would be torture. It would be inhumane to subject a woman to this. So, for these two women that I'm referring to, for them to even think about me is torture and torment for them. So what I've learned to do is to switch to a different topic, right? That's how you deal with it, because there is no way to deal with it. And I brought up the topic of one of the women, her firstborn son, and I thought, Timmy is a great guy, and I went on lauding his salient qualities that I thought were the most prominent, to me anyway, and significant, namely his wholeness. He was so complete. There wasn't anything he lacked. He had everything he needed to be himself and not become himself. But as I met him, as a grown young man, he already is himself. He's already complete. And I was humbled in his presence. I couldn't even look up at him face to face. It was phenomenal, the power of presence that the man has. And she said, "Oh yeah, he has that effect on a lot of people," and I don't think he realized it. So I started off with saying, well, because it's his natural, it's his self. It's so natural because it's just his self. It's nothing foreign to himself. So how could he notice what everybody else notices? And he is a bodybuilder, and he's got some heck of a body, You can envy if you like. And he walks with such grace. He carries his body with... he's just like a perfect model, Maybe he's a model. Maybe that's how he makes his income. I don't know, but he sure is. He's got an enviable body. But he's got an enviable presence, on top of which he also is good looking from top to bottom. So I think that just about wraps up this little topic on Om, because being homeless and dealing with this mother of this beautiful firstborn son who can't stand what I'm going through and periodically has to pummel me, literally, pummel me with her personality, shall we say. And I don't like it. I don't appreciate it. Who would? But I have to literally fend for my dignity and defend myself, and I shouldn't have to do that, but I have to. And so now I understand and appreciate where she's coming from. It's a limitation of her gender, that her gendered nervous system cannot tolerate the mere thought of homelessness. And it's probably because she's so sensitive, because she has such a fantastic firstborn child, that's put her on the edge, on the brink of the path of yoga, literally. But if she did start it in this life, it better be a householder's mantra. But if she doesn't, if she comes back as a guy in her next life, she'll be much more suitable for making use of that Om mantra, if she chooses to go the path of a recluse. She'll certainly be entitled to it as a guy, but not now as a woman. So I think that wraps up this session of recording my thoughts on the subject, and a few tangential thoughts, but, I thought they were kind of necessary. It's just I forget sometimes to come back to the center, come back to the topic at hand, and then I really go far and distant from from remaining on topic. Okay, so that's the little something on homelessness and the mantra Om, utilized by the recluse path of yoga. There is another thought to consider. My trustee embezzled $2.5 million from 13 of her clients, acting as their CPA or whatnot, trustee. And one of those clients was my mother's trust. I didn't have as much money taken from my mother's trust as some of the other clients. They had as much as like $500,000, $600,000. I had a puny little $160,000 taken from my mother's trust. Regardless, I'm homeless on the street because of her actions. And it dawned on me while I was editing the prior episode of this recording, which I'm now going to join the two together to make one, is the possibility, I'm speculating here, but there's a distinct possibility that she got lit on fire when she considered me. At some point in her, well, she's actually been doing this for a while, possibly before she met me, I don't know. So under some, oh, wait a second. No, it has nothing to do with me. That's right. She had to go through divorce. I remember when she was hired by my brother to replace himself, she had been newly divorced. She had a teenage daughter, and she was quite bitter about the divorce. And I imagined at the time, one of the salient features of that bitterness might be, or that resentment might be, that she was forced to have to go to work. Because my ex and I, at the time, felt she was incompetent to do the job, to which she thought she was competent. But we could see right through her and say, oh no, she's incompetent. Because she put on this false personality, oh, blah, 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 and I could see right through it. It was such a thinly veiled charade that everything is just goosey and gorgeous and great, and we're going to just have a great time, blah, blah, blah. Oh, she was the most non-professional professional that I could imagine. Anytime we had a business meeting, it wasn't a business meeting. It was a petting zoo, because she was emotionally insecure, probably due to her recent divorce, and needed me to tell her what a great job she's doing, instead of taking care of business. I usually would always have bullet points to discuss on my agenda, and she had no agenda except a petting zoo, and dominate the meeting so that I could not cover any of my business points regarding my need for the coming week for her to take care of certain things, blah, 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 on my behalf. So I shouldn't be surprised that I think, because it's hard to understand, why would somebody do something evil and risk being caught, assuming that they won't be, or even assuming, well, until then, it'll be fun. It'll be good. I'll have some fun. Regardless, it's just so stupid. Why would anybody even think of it? Well, if they're insane because their nervous system got lit on fire, because now they have to go work for a living, giving them a sensitivity or a sensibility or a self-regard, a self-image of homelessness now that they have been divorced. Ooh, that's pretty heavy. That's very heavy. And that explains it as a speculative line of reasoning to dismiss any misunderstanding, at the very least, if for no other purpose, to dismiss the cluelessness that engulfs me as to why she would do such a thing. Well, it's quite possible her nervous system got lit on fire, and she not realize it. And that might be the false facade was to suppress self-recognition, at least when among your clients, don't give away the fact that you've lost it. No, put on your best image to be hired and liked, and that you are in charge, and that everything is cool, and you don't have anything to worry about, because I'm in charge. I'm here now. I meaning her. So that makes sense, to practice denial, basically. Self-denial of what shape she was in. The shape she was already in before she even was given the job of replacing my brother. That's in a bad way she was. It was already the case. So I can't blame myself for anything for what she became, because she was already that. She didn't become it as far as I knew her along the timeline of her life. And now in the scope of this homelessness/homelessness topic, I can see how she fits into the scheme of things as to why she would do such a hideous thing. Because she's clueless. Because she's got something far worse going on inside her personality, inside her nervous system. Far worse than I could imagine. And I can't imagine it. I've had it described by Maharishi, and it's quite a distinct possibility that's what she's going through. I'm speculating, I don't know. But if it's the case, it would put everything in perspective, and it would pale. It would make what she did to me and 12 of her other clients pale by contrast to what she's already going through. So maybe we can blame her husband, or her former husband. Regardless, I'm sure he had his reasons, regardless. Or maybe her fire already got lit. And that's why he divorced her. We don't know. We can speculate till the goose is cooked, but until our goose is cooked. But hers already is. We don't know. Anyway, I thought I'd add this this last thought, because it's significant. It helps explain, and it brings back full circle why a friend of mine, a former neighbor where I used to live with, among her and other people, why she and another neighbor would come down so hard on me. Because now I got 3 women to think about giving me a hard time. One giving me homelessness, and the other 2 saying, "What the fuck are you not going to a shelter for? What are you, stupid? Go!" And I'm going, "Oh fuck, what are they coming? Oh my god, I gotta, where's my shield? The shield to protect myself." Whatever. Okay, enough said.